Welcome to episode 276 of Real Health Radio. You can find the show notes and the links talked about as part of this episode at 7, so the word all spelled out, SEVEN health.com/276. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Real Health Radio. I'm your host, Chris Sandel. I'm a nutritionist and a coach, and I help people to fully recover. Today on the show, I'm chatting with a past client called Sam. And I always get tons of lovely feedback from these episodes, and I know this one is going to be no exception. So Sam had an eating disorder in high school and had gotten to a better place. But now, a decade or so on, the eating disorder had come back. And as she describes, it was a bleak and dark time. And as bad as it was hard for Sam to recognize just how bad things had gotten. As you'll hear her talk about, it was through getting better that she was able to notice even more how she was being impacted. So Sam and I worked together for just under a year, and it really is incredible the changes that occurred over this time. And it wasn't straightforward. Sam is an ER doctor, and she continued working all through this time. So we had to figure out ways to have recovery fit into her life and the variables that she didn't have control over. And I have to say that it was incredible to see the changes in Sam's personality while working together. She was a shell of her real self when we started. And through our time together, she shed her eating disorder self and the real Sam emerged. And it was just so obvious to see this as things improved. I always get lots of great feedback and kind words about these kind of episodes, that it's nice to hear from real people that I've worked with, to hear the stories of others who have struggled with an eating disorder and their road back to health and a better place and what this has looked like. And the reason I'm releasing this now and these kinds of episodes now is that this week I've reopened my practice to new clients again, and this is for a limited time. And at the time of recording this intro, I have 6 spots available. If you hear yourself in Sam's story and you'd like to see a transformation in your own life like she's seen in hers, then I'd love to help. You can head over to 7-health.com/help. And there you can read about how I work with clients and apply for a free recovery strategy call. Or you can send an email to info@7-health.com with the subject line of coaching, and I'll then be in contact with more information. The address again is 7-health.com/help, or you can email info@7-health.com, and I'll put links to both of those in the show notes. So with the intro out of the way, let's get on with the show. Here is my conversation with Sam. Hey, Sam, thanks for joining me today to have a chat.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I want you to just share with the listeners about your experience of us working together, and there's lots of questions and stuff that I want to go through. And I guess just as a starting place, what was life like before you got in contact with me? Like what was your reason, or what were you trying to solve by reaching out?
Yeah, so the best word I could describe it was hectic. I just remember living in Chicago at the time. I was an ER resident, and I started to fall back. I had experienced a restrictive eating disorder back in high school, and I'd started to notice that I was like doing that same pattern, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Started working with a nutritionist out there, and then we ended up moving to California, and I tried to get better on my own, but just wasn't working. So I was isolated and not, I guess the best way to just say it was dark. So I was kind of at my wit's end, and it was like on the border of going, inpatient, but I really don't want to do that because of my job. So I'd been listening to the podcast, and I thought, well, hey, like, let me try this because I really resonate with what he's saying. And so that's kind of how I started to get to think about, meeting with you. And then I was just trying to like solve basically my restrictive eating disorder and getting my life back. It was just, I just remember it as a dark, hectic, confusing, bleak time.
Yeah. And what was going on, like from a symptoms perspective? What were you experiencing?
Yeah, like now in retrospect, I realize a lot more symptoms than I thought at the time.
Yeah.
But There were a couple of things. So one was just lack of energy. I just remember like not even being able to walk 2 blocks to Walgreens without getting tired. And like my friend asking, "Hey, do you want to go to the store to go shopping?" And I remember thinking, okay, like I like rally, let's go, like take deep breaths, let's make it. And now I'm like walking to the store, like no big deal. But that I had a lot of constipation, slow GI system. My hair was falling out. I had a lot of, I think the word's like luongo, where you have the hair on your face and your back.
Yeah.
Brittle nails, but mostly I was so irritable. My boyfriend would say one thing and I would just like bite his head off. The weirdest symptom that I was realizing now in retrospect was like I could not leave the house because the kitchen was here and there was access to food, but then I would also want to leave the house to do something, so I couldn't sit on the couch. And the worst symptom was not being able to sleep. Just up all night, and at one point just laying in bed thinking, well, this could be it. Like this could be my last breath, because I was so malnutrition and I was just not me.
Yeah. And when you reached out, like you said that there'd been this sort of relapse, how long had that been going on? How long have you kind of been in that bleak, darker place you described?
Yeah, about 2.5 years at that point when I reached out to you.
Okay.
And progressively worse. I'd say the really dark, bleak place was about a year before I reached out to you.
And when you reached out, like, did it feel like a big deal to reach out? Like, how was it getting in contact?
Yeah. So for me personally, it felt like a big deal because I thought, oh my gosh, this guy is like never going to respond. You know, he's like a famous podcaster. Why the hell would he respond to me? So I just thought, okay, let me give it a shot. I thought your approach was really unique and it wasn't something I had tried before. So I reached out, and then I think within a day, given, you know, that we're on other sides of the world, you responded and we had a meeting within a week, and then we started working together. So it was real fast and easy, way easier than I thought it was going to be.
And you said it was like listening to the podcast and hearing about my approach, which was different. So what was it about my approach, or what made me kind of stand out or think for you like, okay, this could be the thing that I need?
Yeah. So you really take a scientific approach and this neuro rewiring. And it wasn't just about, you know, like I did partial inpatient in high school, and there was some like therapy involved, but it was mostly like a force feeding meal plan. There wasn't a meal plan with you. It was more scientific and more like, these are the changes going on in your body. This is how we're going to rewire your brain. This is how we're going to fit recovery into your life. And the tailoring that you do for each client is huge, because for me, and I'm probably not unique in this, but like I couldn't take time off of work, or I didn't want to take time off work, I should say. I guess I could have made it work, but it wouldn't have been the best thing for me. And working with you, you were able to make me fit my recovery into my life, but also give me the autonomy to do recovery, because you guided me without making it, you have to do this. So now I feel like, hey, it's my choice. I chose to recover. And that support was incredible.
Nice. And I guess, just for context for people listening, like you work in the ER. And so it's not, it wasn't straightforward in terms of, okay, cool, you have a regular lunch break and the rest of the time you're sitting at a desk and it's very easy to have a snack. Like we had to kind of get a little bit creative with ways of being able to make this work, given that you were in a very high demand job.
Yeah, exactly. And also you were very understanding about when I couldn't do things. Like I would say, I can't get a lunch in and my job is very physically taxing. So you were able to help me compensate for that without making it a scary concept. It was a very safe space to discuss things with you.
Nice. And so talk a little more about like what it was like working together. Like what stands out for you? What aspects did you really like that stand out for you?
Yeah, speaking with you, I always felt really comfortable. So we talked not only about food, but it never felt like food was the main component we were discussing. We talked a lot about like things that caused my coping mechanisms to be restriction. You also brought in a lot of different, I'm not even going to use the right terms here, but like abilities to cope, and then brain patterns that I've kind of realized that I had that we were able to change. I was able to see I was living in a lot of like sympathetic. I was, what's it called? The sympathetic
fight or flight.
Yeah, fight or flight. And able to bring myself down. You gave tons of recommendations on like books and supplemental things that in between our sessions I was able to do. So more than anything, I didn't even feel like we were focusing on the restrictive eating. That was just almost like a byproduct of it, which was kind of funny in retrospect that got better through working on my mental health.
Yeah. And I mean, just so people know, like we were definitely working on the eating side of things. And and as we were going along, especially at the beginning, every time things were getting better, I was like coming back to like, this is because you're eating more. And like fundamentally, that is the thing that made a huge difference for you. And it's just interesting to hear you say like, it didn't feel like that was where we were putting a lot of the focus.
Yeah, well, I think, the way I meant that is like, it's less scary, when someone puts a big plate of food in front of you and says, eat it, you get scared when you're in that restrictive state. But with working with you, it wasn't as scary because I think I was working on other things. And then I was able to also challenge the food. And then both of them supplemented each other. And it ended up culminating into success. And I feel like 1,000 times better.
Nice. And so, talk about that part of it then, like in terms of like, what are some of the results that have happened? Like what are the best things that have happened because of this?
Yeah, so many things. As you know, like my life changed so much in the time we were working together, but basically just I got my life back.
Yeah.
Big things were with my job. I'm now working 12-hour shifts, like nothing. I barely noticed the time. Before it was consistently like every minute, oh my gosh, I can't get up out of this chair anymore. Like now I just run around and it's great. I have no fear in just grabbing a snack when I'm hungry. I'm able to eat and do things like, spontaneously. Like a good example for me that I would have never done was my mom was visiting and she really wanted to eat noodles, and just we were walking down the street. She said, "Oh, there's a noodle place. Oh, but I know that's scary for you." And I said, "No, let's go." And we had noodles, and I would have never done that. So the spontaneity in my life is back. My hair has grown back. My GI system's functioning. My energy's back. Like I don't remember the last fight I had with my now fiance because of this. Like just I am infinitely happier. And the bottom line is just happiness. I got my happiness back. And that's huge.
Which is really interesting because I obviously didn't know you beforehand. And so it was always like, let's see what the real Sam is like when she's not in this, as you said, like dark or bleak place. And you were like, no, like I used to be like fun loving and bubbly. And that was who I am at the core. And that was kind of taken away from you. And so it's nice to see that this is you being back in that place.
Oh yeah, it feels incredible. And people have noticed, and it's kind of just like a side note, but no one ever comments on your weight. They comment on your happiness. And so many of my friends who I haven't seen in a while, when I went back and visited home, were like, "Oh my gosh, you just seem so happy." Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I do. All right. Yeah.
And so then talk about your relationship with food now and what that's like.
Yeah. So there's still sometimes when it's a struggle. Like if I'm stressed, I might have some of the thoughts, but you definitely taught me how to do fact checking and kind of talk to myself and see, why am I worried about it? And so it never seems to be about the food. And I'm now able to say, okay, is it the food in this situation, or is it the environment, or where's my headspace, or what kind of stress am I at? So when I am, out to eat, I'm able to choose things that look good. The other day I ordered something and the portion was way smaller than what I knew I needed. And I was able to get up and go back to the ordering line and order more food without embarrassment. I eat when I'm hungry now, which is huge for me to eat not on a schedule. The food isn't the main thing anymore. And it's kind of funny because I realized the other day that I don't even look at menus anymore. Like, I don't go to restaurants and stress over what's going to be there. I just go to the restaurant with whoever I'm with. And it just feels much more free, you know? And it's almost like a different mindset with food now where I'm like, oh, I need this because this makes me be the happy person and the energetic person that I want to be. So it's really done a 180, and that's so freeing.
No, and I do, like, I remember during our time together, there are lots of times where you had to visit family or friends and you were kind of going from where you were to Chicago or going and visit people. And in the beginning, how much of a struggle that would be. And it would be 3 weeks out and there was already the panic of like, what's it going to be like? How's the trip going to go? And then just as time went on, just noticing that wasn't there anymore. And that even there were times where it's like, oh, I'm really excited we're going to be doing this dinner, or where it had kind of been replaced from a place of fear to actually there are things I'm looking forward to in this trip connected to food.
Yeah, which is so cool. And like, I realize I'm no longer the one trying to control the food situation. Like, hey, I'm going to go to this restaurant, or we're going to do this. Or like my sister said, hey, you're staying with me. What foods do you want? And I said, I don't know, whatever's in your fridge. And I've not said that in 3 years.
And what about in terms of your body and body image? Like, we haven't really talked about this so far. So how much was that affected during your eating disorder? And then what is that looking like now?
Yes, I never actually really liked my body very much during the eating disorder either. I felt like I needed to hide it because it showed something that I was hiding in my life. But then the weight gain was subtle, and I didn't really notice I was gaining weight, I don't think. But then I started feeling so good that I started to be like, wow, you know, I have gained weight. And I was actually kind of proud of it for a while, because it was like, hey, this is the work I've done. And I used to be a soccer player back in high school and some of college. And like, I was really proud of my ability to play and my athleticism. So now I'm starting to feel that way again. Like, I can go on hikes and I feel strong in my body. So I'm trying to focus on that a lot. Of course, I had to throw out like most of my wardrobe. And there are times, of course, not every day is a beautiful body image day, but I don't think anyone has that.
Sure.
So it's actually, I'm more thankful. And this was one thing that, you know, we kind of talked about, and you had a worksheet on, and I kind of reviewed that worksheet pretty often, is like, what are you thankful for about your body? And I'm very thankful for everything my body functions, because not even 9 months ago, my body didn't function like this, and I couldn't do certain things. So now I'm just really focusing on that. And I'm really lucky though to also have people around me who just are very supportive of whatever I look like. So that's great too.
Yeah. And it's good to recognize that. And even with that doesn't always help. Like, so much of the body image piece still is an internal job. And I remember there were a couple of times during our time together where you were weighed, and I can't remember why
I was at the doctor.
Happened.
Yeah. And they didn't not tell me the weight, which was weird, but sure.
And something like you weren't meant to find out the weight, and then you did. But I at least remember, like, on one occurrence, like me saying, okay, well, what was that experience like for you? And there was a little ambivalence, but there was still this, like, I feel really proud. Like, I feel really good about this, and it's showing that I'm moving in the right direction, and I can notice that I have all of these benefits that have been happening, and that is down to the way. And just so for listeners know, you were also working with a dietitian throughout this as well, and we were in contact over that time, and you were getting weighed by them, but you didn't know what the weight was. And so I was then getting that information, and it was so obvious, like when things were getting better, weight was going on, and when things weren't, either weight had plateaued or you were going back the other way. And so that was why earlier I said, like, it was really fundamentally about you having more energy coming in. Like it was so the trend of you getting better and weight going on were like hand in hand.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's funny because I didn't recognize that at the time,
Yeah.
because obviously I didn't know the numbers, but it really does feel now like just a number because the weight on my body feels good.
Yeah.
And there's the other side effects that you get with weight, like the bags in my eyes aren't sunken and my skin is more pink and flush. And
Yeah.
so it kind of masks like the weight gain, and it doesn't matter now what my weight is because I feel so good that I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And the work we did, was it what you expected? Was it different?
No, it's 100% different. I have never done work like this before. Like I said, my past experiences were inpatient, and then I worked with a dietitian in Chicago, but it was just so focused on like the food and the concepts of intuitive eating without getting at the core. And no matter how much I was drilling into my brain, like intuitive eating principles or just sitting there shoving food in my face to try to gain weight, it didn't matter because it wasn't getting at the principle of what was going on. And I think you were able to hit both of those things. And that neurowiring and the scientific concepts that you were bringing in and the explanations. And then you had me do worksheets that really like made me do critical thinking. That was just something I had never done. And that to me led to more permanent change than something that was just a temporary measure so for the listeners, I like to backpack and hike. And that was one thing I was not willing to give up for, exercise restriction, because that was a big thing I did with my friends. And I remember at the beginning, we would be like, okay, let's just eat to go on this hike. But after working with you, I realized like I don't even think like that anymore because of the mental shift that I've had. And so now it's not about getting through something. It's actually about having autonomy to correct my restrictive eating.
Nice.
So that was, I didn't even know that was possible, really. This kind of treatment. I didn't know this treatment was possible.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for someone who is struggling with food and their body in the way that you were?
Admit to yourself early on that you have a problem. That would be my first thing. I wouldn't admit it for a long time. And it doesn't matter what you look like, because at first I didn't look like I had a problem. And then there's also multiple routes of treatment. And it's not just inpatient, it's not just partial outpatient. I mean, I'm a doctor and I'm speaking against like regular treatment. I want everyone to know that there is alternatives, or there are alternatives, excuse my English. And working with someone who fits your vibe is going to be the best thing. And my best advice is that life is great and it doesn't matter about food, and the people around you don't care about the food, they care about you. So if, that took me a while to realize that the people in my life were sad because they lost the true Sam. And when I became my true self again, I was really happy. I had better relationships. I have, just an overall better happiness, and go out and find someone who will help you the best that you need to be helped.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, look, is there anything else that you want to add? And that I didn't ask that.
Yeah, you should probably just work with Chris, because he literally changed my life. And if you ask my fiance now, he'll say like that working with Chris was the best thing you ever did. He literally says that's the best money you've ever spent. It's the best thing you've ever did. And he saved your life. And it is like, we kind of joke about it now because we'll be like, oh, Chris was my angel. And like, we'll kind of joke and like say things, but it really was like, this was the only thing that changed my trajectory on my restrictive eating disorder. And that was huge for us. I'm just a new person, and that was really cool.
Well, it is so lovely to hear that. And I really take that on board. And I'm so grateful that I got to work with you, because it's so nice to see the difference in you and to get to see the kind of real you now. And yeah, I'm glad that you reach out and you trusted in me, and we've done this work together.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything.
That's all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with the listeners.
Of course.
So I hope you found that conversation useful and it inspired you to see what's possible. Sam isn't a unicorn. This kind of transformation is available to you too. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm now taking on clients, and at the time of recording this, I have only 6 spots available. If you're interested in working together or finding out more, you can head over to 7-health.com/help, or you can send an email to info@7-health.com. That's it for this week's show. I'll be back next week with another client episode. So if you want to hear another recovery story, I will catch you then.